Welcome to the Gaia Report. I'm Crystal Johnson, a co-host, and the other co-host is?
Me, Aspen Johnson.
One of the main issues regarding the environment is regarding waste. And there's food waste, which we've talked about on the show, as well as material waste. And regarding most of the waste as consumers that we have, most people rely on recycling as a solution. And recycling is actually a rather complex issue.
Recycling actually is a complex issue, as you really said.
And while recycling does help the environment, it's really not as simple and easy. It's actually quite complicated.
Yeah. To start, everything we do has an impact.
That's true. So nothing is benign. And what we mean by that is from all of the actions, particularly with our waste issue, it creates an issue. Whether it is a land issue, meaning it can use land for needing to have dumps or landfill, or through recycling, creates air impacts, water quality impacts through the processing of the recycling. And then also, some of the other issues could be,
or if it's an impact in my backyard or someone else's.
Exactly. It has to be somewhere. A recycling plant has to be somewhere, and there's a thing called NIMBYism, where it has to do with not in my backyard, where many people favor having recycling, but they don't want necessarily to have that plant there or something else there. So where is it going to be, and where is the impact? Over there? Is it here? Or such? What else is something that you think about too?
So depending on...
If it's short-term or long-term impacts too.
Short-term or long-term.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So there are a lot of different variables to think about when you're considering recycling. So while recycling does help with limiting having to destroy, take, or harvest natural resources such as trees for paper or metals for some of the cans that we may use or any other material, and it also helps create green jobs, it also does have some adverse impacts. And the severity of those impacts really varies on where that plant is. Because if you have a recycling plant in an area such as maybe Bronx, New York, where they're already maybe not in non-attainment for some of the air quality standards, to add to it creates a public health issue, can worsen asthma. So even though the recycling can help reduce impacts on trees, it could also create a public health issue. So recycling is actually a little bit more complex than most people probably realize.
Yeah. So depending on where the recycling plant is, it can worsen air quality and contribute to public health issues like asthma.
It is true. So I'm still very fond of recycling, but one of the main issues is with how do we handle our waste is rather than dealing with a solution at the end of the supply chain, is there a way to address and minimize waste at the front end? Like how they're designing what it is that we're consuming, and how can it be packaged so there's less material, or that any way that we can have the process also reduce material needs. So rather than keeping on as we're doing and just recycling and thinking that that's a great panacea, a great solution, it's not sometimes the best sustainable one. It's the best one we have, but I think we're now at a point where we have to look at the whole process in a different way. And I have an interesting fact for you too.
You do?
Yes. And I don't think you've heard this. So
Must not have.
in the late 1980s, when recycling really was advanced here in the United States, we saw a drop in a need to mine bauxite, which is a metal that's added to aluminum cans. It's called bauxite. It's my understanding that bauxite is mined in Jamaica, the beautiful island Jamaica. And you know what happened when recycling actually started to take place and they would reuse some of the aluminum? There was less of a need for bauxite, so there was less mining. And while mining can be rather invasive and you would think, oh, that's a great thing. It also, though, has a socioeconomic impact. You had a lot of miners who then now didn't have jobs. And you know what they correlated? That when recycling went up and there was less need for, say, bauxite in Jamaica, to make up for that economic loss of those jobs, people actually did some poaching of sea turtles. So then there was an impact to marine life. So you're trying to help recycling on one end, but on the other end, you could also see how then the ripple out effect. So it's a very complicated web we've created regarding how we deal with our consumerism, our waste, and how do we address it.
Preventive with the design of product use less materials and to create less waste?
That is something that I'm really hoping that we move towards. So rather than just dealing with, let's recycle at the end of a life cycle of something we have, how can we make it a lot smarter and sustainable from the very beginning? Because as we've just discussed, recycling is something that's needed. It's very much helps with reducing landfill and draining limited resources, but it also comes with a cost, not just a financial cost, but an air quality, a water quality, and other costs. So as you at home think about what you buy, and you may be thinking about just recycling, you can also think about at the beginning, okay, how are you buying something? How is it packaged? Are there different choices you could make? And then you could also maybe contact places as a consumer where your money and your voice, because there's dollars behind it, has weight, that you can say, as a consumer, I would prefer if you made this more in a sustainable design and sustainable process. And that we can then start to pressure industry to change rather than have the responsibility for recycling at the end. How can we prevent that and make it better? So some things just for people to think about regarding recycling.
So as you can tell, recycling is a complex issue.
On behalf of Mother Nature,
thank you.